spread of nuclear weapons is the greatest threat facing our country and, I would argue, facing humanity. Quote from Joe Biden. I affirm that states ought to eliminate nuclear arsenals based on my values regarding safety and future of the Earth's natural resources and global population. I plan to uphold my values of safety and future by arguing against the development of nuclear arsenals, which is defined as a subset of tactical nuclear missiles. I as well be arguing against the increased proliferation of nuclear arsenals, which is defined as the spread of nuclear weapons, materials, and technology to states that do not have any form of nuclear production. I will touch on the subjects of cost, destruction, and expansion as to back up my claims and values based on future and safety. In my first argument, I will discuss how much money actually goes into nuclear production. From the years 1940 to 1996, based on an article from Brookings.edu, the US has spent an estimated $5.8 trillion during that time frame. That time frame was during the Cold War, so there was a lot of nuclear development. 86% of that money was used just for the launch systems of the nuclear weapons. Launch systems include strategic bombers, ballistic missiles, and even landmines, nuclear landmines. Compared to all other federal government expenses, the spending during 1940 through 1996, per documents from the OMB, nuclear budget ranks third in federal government spendings. On average, the US spends $98 billion per year during that time frame on nuclear development. The US has devoted an extensive amount of effort, resources, and money towards the production of nuclear weapons. The nuclear budget outweighs costs from education, employment, natural resources, and more all combined. If we had used the budget to instead support these other federal costs, then a world in which we could improve our nationwide society could occur. This would increase our safety as a nation because we would be free of these detrimental explosive weapons, and it would also guarantee our future in regards to improving these other federal expenses such as employment, education, and more. Nuclear development costs are large, it's unarguable, but the rise of increased nuclear proliferation can prove to be even more detrimental to our nation and the world as a whole. My second argument contains my claim that if states continue to expand nuclear production, instances of both horizontal and vertical proliferation will occur, which will increase the risk of a nuclear war. Vertical proliferation basically includes an increase of arsenals for states that already possess nuclear weapons. So for example, it's if the United States continue to add nuclear weapons and development to their already high level of infantry, which they still do today. Horizontal proliferation includes the idea of having increased nuclear arsenals or developing nuclear arsenals in states that don't have any form of production already. So states that don't have any form of production, if they were to be given nuclear technology and they were to start developing it there, that is a horizontal proliferation. In order to depict how effective proliferation is, we must take into account the Cuban Missile Crisis. Basically, what happened during the Cuban Missile Crisis was when an American pilot was flying over Cuba, he photographed the development of Soviet bombs in that country. What made it so scary was that Cuba was in range of the United States. Basically, this caused a large debacle that lasted about 2 weeks between the United States and Russia. Eventually, they were able to come to an agreement. The agreement basically said that Russia demanded the United States take out their bombs in Turkey and that they would not invade Cuba if the Russians were able to get their nuclear missiles and nuclear production out of that country. The United States agreed, and basically what had happened is that the United States had pushed the limits of how many nuclear weapons they could possibly produce, as well as extended the areas of production in which they produced these weapons. This form of vertical proliferation by the U.S. This is a form of vertical proliferation by the U.S. As they tried to develop weapons in Turkey, Russia tried to develop weapons in Cuba. Because Turkey is in range of Russia, so as a combat, Russia developed weapons in Cuba because it's in range of America. Luckily, this event was resolved, but if it hadn't, the safety and future of the entire world would inevitably be in jeopardy, as the two biggest nuclear power forces would have gone right at each other if they had not solved this issue. Proliferation between states has caused a drastic expansion of nuclear knowledge and production throughout the entire world. And it's this expansion that could lead to a worldwide nuclear fallout. As nuclear technology advances, an increased risk of environmental catastrophes, worldwide destruction, and severe human casualties are all inevitable. If we consider the possibility of a small nuclear war, the economic effects would be devastating, according to the UCLA professor Richard Turco. If a war in which just 0.03% of the world's nuclear arsenal was used, climatic anomalies from the black soot launched into the air would include a plummet in global temperatures, a halt in all crop production for decades to come, and a reduction of the ozone layer 40% around the equator and even up to 70% in the poles. This would turn us into an all-out ice age immediately and potentially killing the entirety of humanity if we had not been prepared. The advancements are so high, in fact, that according to an article written on beyondthebomb.org by Colleen Moore, the current B-83 warhead that contains 60 times the TNT and power than Fat Boy did during World War II, used against Japan. If we were to uphold the values and safety, if we were to uphold the values of safety and future for not only ourselves, but for the entire world, nuclear development ought to be banned. States ought to eliminate nuclear arsenals. I affirm this proposition due to the risk that nuclear warheads have on the safety of the population and the future of our environmental world as a whole. If states continue in their desire to increase nuclear production, issues including the misuse of federal budget, a spread of vertical and horizontal proliferation, and worldwide destruction are all possible. As Emmett Ray once said, Earth is a playground of our children and their children. We cannot allow it to be a playground of the nuclear arms of the evil forces. Thank you.